Houston, Texas is a city known for many things such as its large infrastructure, the Houston Rodeo, and especially its lead in aerospace with NASA's Johnson Space Center being located in the city. However, outside of this, it is renowned for the Houston Ship Channel. Here, the city is recognized as the energy capital of the world, hosting some of the largest oil and gas facilities in the world and driving many innovative technologies related to the industry. Additionally, it is home to numerous Fortune 500 companies and the HQ of ExxonMobil, the second largest oil company in the world. For this project, I interviewed a few people of varying backgrounds to get a general understanding of how surrounding communities are affected by the industry, if it's well known to tourists, and how it affects their choices about going to Houston. Naturally, this drives curiosity about the effects that the oil and gas industry has on the surrounding environment in the Houston area, as well as how these companies affect the city's economy and population and the communities located near the plants. I begin by interviewing Roy Chancellor, who was born in 1952 and raised in Comanche, Texas. Comanche is a small agricultural community surrounded by a rugged and hilly environment. At 9 years old, Roy moves to another small town called Terrell, Texas. Roy notes that people living in these small towns were typically financially unstable and that he himself needed to work 3 jobs in order to maintain some form of financial security. In 1977, after running into personal issues and seeking financial stability, Roy chooses to move to Houston, Texas, where he ends up entering the oil and gas industry as a millwright. He states that after moving to Houston, he was able to maintain stability working a single job and in fact was able to live comfortably, stating that the industry was the backbone of the middle class in Houston, Texas. Gwen Chancellor was one of the people born into these middle-class families. Her dad was involved in the oil and gas industry and they resided in Pasadena, Texas, on the coast of Houston. Like her, a majority of the people living in Pasadena worked in the Houston Ship Channel due to the number of industrial facilities, specifically oil and gas refineries, in the area. And the number of people working in the industry only grew as the number of facilities increased and hence positions. Since its inception, the oil and gas industry was extremely lucrative and brought huge amounts of money as well as jobs into the Houston, Pasadena, and Baytown areas. Since the oil and gas industry often gives back to the communities they are part of, usually just to stay in good graces, this often leads to more financially stable areas near industry and, as Roy stated, aided in creating the middle class in those areas. Additionally, as refineries grew along the ship channel, more jobs and hence more buildings would need to be created in order to continue production at an acceptable rate. This led to those companies investing exuberant amounts of money into infrastructure in downtown Houston, thereby spreading the wealth across more locations around and inside of Houston. The oil and gas industry is a significant economic driver for the Houston area, raking in billions of dollars for the city in tax revenue, according to the Department of Energy. However, the oil and gas industry is also known for its profoundly negative environmental effects in the areas surrounding it. One of the first things Roy notes about moving from the countryside to the coast of Houston was the change in scenery and smell. In Houston, specifically along the coast, the sky almost always has a gray tinge to it and a distinct odor caused by the hydrogen sulfide gas being released from the numerous oil and gas plants. In fact, according to Gwen, Pasadena is known for this rotten egg smell, granting it the nickname Stinkadena by its visitors. Additionally, other known harmful chemicals such as methane, benzene, toluene, formaldehyde, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen oxides are released from these refineries, leading to increased rates of health issues such as asthma, cardiovascular disease, and numerous cancers for people living in the surrounding communities. With this in mind, we must now consider what the average person living outside of the Houston area thinks of Houston and how this can give us an idea of what other tourists think. For this, I interviewed Courtney Da Silva and Ethan Elliott. Both were raised in the Austin area away from any form of oil and gas industry. Courtney has family living in the Houston area and noted that when she visits them, the thing she notices most about Houston is the large infrastructure. She, however, had no idea about how large the oil and gas industry is, nor the effects that it has on the Houston area, and says that this changes nothing about how she views the location. Ethan, however, is knowledgeable of the impact that the oil and gas industry has and only minds the smell. He states that if he were here to visit, he likely wouldn't stay for long. However, he wouldn't necessarily avoid visiting any sites due to the smell. Although people do acknowledge the smell, these two statements, along with Roy and Gwen's observation that the industry does not deter tourism, seems to illustrate that regardless of the industry's monstrous presence, tourists seem to be unaffected. Even fear regarding the safety of these plants has no effect on tourism. Gwen notes that after the Phillips 66 explosion on October 23, 1989, an explosion that killed 23 people and registered as a 3.5 on the Richter scale, there was increasing paranoia about personal safety on and near these plants. However, this incident forever changed the industry along the ship channel and helped soothe the fears of those who were concerned, as safety precautions became an extreme focus in the industry. Overall, the oil and gas industry has several positive and negative effects on the Houston area, and it is important for us to consider all of these when forming an opinion on the industry. Whether you're for or against oil and gas is a personal decision and should be weighed equivalently as the opposite. However, it is important to remember that there are good and bads in the industry. Houston would likely not be nearly as large and house nearly as many people as it does if it weren't for the industry. Likewise, it is likely that the surrounding environment would be a lot healthier and communities wouldn't be prone to such detrimental health issues if the industry didn't loom as large. It is integral that we consider all of the facts when we want to truly understand an industry and how good or bad it is.